I am absolutely going to testify. I won't even say his name. He is an evil being and is going to pay.
I think that I was just, living in this shame, living in all this sort of stuff of my past, and I wasn't able to move on. It was hard for me being that young and being in the industry and not knowing where to turn, and everyone, telling me they loved me and, just turn their back on you in a second.
Combs allegedly planned and controlled the sex performances, which he called freak-offs, and he often electronically recorded them. The freak-offs sometimes lasted days at a time.
The courtroom froze in absolute silence as Diddy's calm exterior suddenly shattered. His fists tightened, his jaw locked in rage, and the entire room could feel the tension spike the moment Justin Bieber's name rang out. What you're about to see is the precise moment Diddy completely lost his composure during day 2 of the trial, right after finding out that Justin Bieber had openly voiced his support for.
Do you think the person that the you of then was on a path of self-destruction?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I would have, for sure, 100%, yeah. It would have been no bueno. It was bad. I don't know if I'd be alive, for sure. It was dark, so I'm very, very grateful to have influences in my life that have played a huge part in me seeing their relationship with Jesus and their relationship with their wives and their relationship with their kids and saying that's what I want. But I want to definitely tell my story so that if that resonates to anybody, that they can hopefully. But yeah, just protecting those moments because people take for granted encounters and
Wow! I feel violated right now. Wow.
Lean into me again. You smell amazing. How old are you?
Thank you.
How old are you?
I'm 16. I'll be 17 in like 2 weeks.
I don't ever remember smelling that good at 16. That was bad. Wow, look at your eyes. Look at what a beautiful...
Bieber turned 15, and it suddenly seemed that Hollywood was keen to almost initiate him. I think that's the right word. Like there was almost like this initiation that he needed to go through. So I want you to be now super uncomfortable and watch this video of an interaction between him and none other than Diddy. Take a listen.
Justin, you ever seen the movie for the times of their lives, like, where we hanging out and what we doing? We can't really disclose, but it's definitely a 15-year-old's dream. I have been given custody of him. He signed to Usher. I had legal guardianship of Usher when he did his first album. I did Usher's first album. I don't have legal guardianship of him, but for the next 48 hours, he's with me. So and we gonna go full.
Young Justin Bieber, who was signed by Usher, involved with Scooter Braun. Now all of a sudden he's being put in the hands of Diddy, who, it is true, he became the legal guardian for Usher. You can look up all of the allegations of what Diddy did. The allegations are essentially that Diddy very much initiated Usher. As we are going through these lawsuits and Diddy is in prison, we are recognizing that everybody knew. This was an open secret about what Diddy was doing. So it just begs the question, who allowed Justin Bieber to be in the presence of this man, knowing what he was up to, allegedly up to? That seems to be
Cassie. Security had to intervene instantly, and what unfolded next left even the judge in utter disbelief. Day 2 began with an unusual calm hanging over the courtroom. Diddy entered, flanked by his pricey legal team, carrying himself with a confident air. But if you looked into his eyes closely, something was definitely off. He kept scanning the room, like he was searching for someone ready to jump out at him. The security setup wasn't typical either. They had doubled the guards near Diddy's table, far from the usual for a celebrity trial. One guard stood right behind his chair, another positioned by the aisle. It almost felt like they'd been tipped off that trouble was coming. Then Cassie walked in, and every head turned. She wore a simple black dress with a white collar, nothing flashy yet powerful in its statement. Her friends formed a tight, protective circle around her, escorting her to her seat like personal bodyguards. The contrast was striking. Diddy surrounded by hired security, Cassie backed by loyal friends. the most telling thing? Diddy couldn't stop checking his phone. He kept pulling it out, scrolling with his thumb, and every time his face darkened a little more. At one point, his lawyer had to actually reach over and snatch the phone from him. That's when I noticed Diddy's hand was trembling. Meanwhile, the prosecution team was acting suspiciously. They kept passing notes and whispering behind folders. One prosecutor showed something on her tablet to another, and they both nodded, like they'd just uncovered the missing piece of a puzzle. They knew something big was about to happen. Diddy's lead lawyer tried calming him down at least 3 times before the judge arrived. He'd lean in, whisper something in Diddy's ear, and place a hand on his shoulder, but Diddy brushed him off every single time. Once, so forcefully that the lawyer nearly lost his balance and had to steady himself on the table. When the judge finally walked in, her expression said it all. Day 1. She was businesslike but relaxed. Today, she looked like a principal who'd just been told the troublemaker was plotting something serious. Her eyes locked on Diddy's table, and she whispered something to her clerk, who immediately nodded and pulled out his phone. What no one in the room knew yet was that Diddy had just seen something on social media moments before court started. Something that would make him completely lose it in front of everyone. His team tried to hide his phone, but it was already too late. He'd seen Justin Bieber's post. The bailiff called the courtroom to order, and you could feel the tension rise with every word spoken. The jurors seemed to pick up on it too. They kept exchanging confused looks, wondering why everyone seemed so on edge. One juror even asked for water, her hand visibly shaking as she took the cup. Diddy sat there, leg bouncing uncontrollably beneath the table, a vein bulging on his forehead. His lawyer kept placing legal papers in front of him, trying to distract him, but Diddy he pushed the papers away, his eyes locked straight ahead, breaths growing heavier with every passing second. It was like watching someone trying desperately to hold back an explosion. Everyone in the room could feel that something was about to blow up. We just didn't know what would trigger it or how bad it would get once it did. The clock on the wall ticked louder and louder as the anticipation built. Diddy's flawless image was moments away from completely crumbling in front of the entire courtroom. Yeah. So, I just want to protect her, you know? I don't want her to lose it. I don't want her to go through what I went through. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. So, if she ever needs me, just think about how young I was, so impressionable, with everyone constantly telling me how great I was. It's like putting a kid in a room full of sweets and saying, "I'll be back in 2 days." Exactly. I want people to understand the psychology behind why I could potentially have problems in my life. Meanwhile, let's shift gears and talk about Combs' co-defendant in a civil case, a case that accuses both Combe and another A-lister of rape. This guy is once again calling out the attorney behind the lawsuit, demanding sanctions for allegedly failing to do his job. We're talking about Sean Carter, better known as Jay-Z, who's publicly calling out attorney Tony Busby, questioning his character and claiming the Texas lawyer's filings lack substance. We've discussed this before, but the civil lawsuit was filed against Sean Combe on behalf of a Jane Doe who alleges she was raped by Combe and another celebrity at a house party after the 2000 Video Music Awards. While the courtroom drama unfolded, something huge exploded online. Justin Bieber dropped a social media bombshell that nobody saw coming. Right in the middle of the trial, Bieber posted a statement supporting Cassie that sent shockwaves throughout the music industry and that very courtroom. The blow hit even harder because Bieber and Diddy share a long history. Remember those videos of teenage Bieber hanging out at Diddy's parties? Diddy used to call himself Justin's mentor and big brother, even bragging about shaping Bieber's career. That made Bieber's public statement feel like the ultimate betrayal. And this wasn't some vague sending love message either. Bieber was specific. He wrote about attending industry parties where he personally witnessed Diddy's behavior toward Cassie. He mentioned seeing Diddy grab Cassie's arm too harshly at a 2015 after-party. He described Diddy cutting Cassie off mid-sentence and speaking for her during interviews. These weren't rumors. These were first-hand accounts. During the first court recess, Bieber's posts spread like wildfire. Groups gathered in courthouse hallways, phones out, sharing screenshots. One court officer had to remind everyone to turn off devices before returning inside. Legal assistants printed the screenshots for attorneys. Even jurors looked puzzled by the whispered conversations, clearly sensing something major had happened. The post included a powerful old photo showing Bieber and Cassie smiling at a music event years ago. But if you looked closely at Cassie's eyes, something deeper was there. Bieber's caption said he always respected Cassie's strength and was sorry I didn't speak up sooner. For Diddy, the timing couldn't have been worse. Bieber's 270 million followers saw the post within minutes. News outlets were already running headlines. This wasn't just celebrity gossip anymore. It was a massive star with credibility taking a clear side during an ongoing trial. Court. Reporters went into a frenzy. One woman literally sprinted out of the courtroom to call her editor. Another frantically typed on her laptop. A reporter from a major network mouthed, "Did you see it?" to a colleague across the aisle. Everyone knew this changed everything about how the public would see this case. The whispers grew so loud a bailiff had to ask for quiet. People kept showing each other their phones, unable to believe what they were seeing. Some looked at Diddy, trying to figure out if he knew yet. Others watched Cassie, who kept perfect composure despite the obvious commotion. What made Bieber's statement so powerful was his specific language. He called Cassie brave and truthful, and wrote that certain behaviors he witnessed years ago deeply troubled him, but he didn't understand the pattern at the time. He even said he was disappointed in himself for not recognizing the controlling dynamics that are now so clear. Diddy's attorney saw the post first. He immediately tried damage control, blocking Diddy's view of another lawyer's phone and urgently whispering to remove all devices from the table. But someone had already shown Diddy the screen. His eyes locked on it and widened. Everyone close enough saw his face change. By then, it was already too late. At 13 years old, Bieber was signed by Usher to a label co-owned by Scooter Braun and Usher. He was considered Usher's protege. Bieber has always described Usher as his mentor. Now, Justin Bieber is continuing the purge. He has even moved to call out his original mentor. This is a huge story and a reason we shouldn't downplay what's happening. And this isn't just celebrity drama. This is the fall of Hollywood Babylon we are witnessing. Back in 2020, Bieber did an interview with Zane Lowe on Apple Music. He spoke about protecting a young rising artist, Billie Eilish. Out of nowhere, Bieber became emotional. Take a listen. "Yeah, I definitely feel protective of her. It was hard being that young in the industry, not knowing where to turn, with everyone telling me they loved me, but then turning their backs in a second. So, yeah, it's hard because I want her to know she can count on me. But at the end of the day, I'm never going to force a relationship. It has to be natural. So, I just let her do her thing, and if she ever needs me, I'll be here for her. But yeah, just protecting those moments. People just don't realize it. Seriously. Watching that moment, it hits hard. It's because he's communicating so much without even saying a word. Protect Billie Eilish from who? From what?" When Diddy saw Bieber's post, it was like his entire demeanor flipped, like a light switch got turned off. First, you could see the shock wash over him. His eyes went wide, his mouth dropped open. Then the betrayal hit. His brows furrowed and you could see him processing it. But the real chilling part? Watching that emotion turn into pure rage. His nostrils flared, and his jaw locked so tight that you could almost hear his teeth grinding. One woman, sitting a few rows back, later told reporters that Diddy's hands started to tremble uncontrollably. He tried to grab the papers his lawyer handed him, but his hands were shaking so much that they just slipped out of his grasp and scattered all over the floor. That's when everyone started to notice. The first real sign came when Diddy stood up abruptly. It wasn't just a casual stretch, it was sudden, like a warning shot. The bailiff, who had been watching him closely all morning, immediately stepped forward. It was clear this wasn't the first time he'd seen someone on the verge of losing it in court. Then Diddy said something loud enough for the people in the front to hear. "After everything I've done for that kid, loyalty means nothing anymore." Then he started talking about consequences. His lawyer, clearly alarmed, grabbed his arm and tried to pull him back into his seat. The lawyer whispered something in his ear, but Diddy shook it off. His breathing became heavy and labored, like he'd just sprinted up a flight of stairs. The courtroom sketches from that moment are honestly unsettling. The artist captured Diddy's expression perfectly. The wide eyes, clenched jaw, veins bulging from his neck. One of the sketch artists later said she had never drawn anyone so intense in her entire career. The prosecutors, meanwhile, were watching every single move. The lead prosecutor made a subtle hand signal to her assistant, who immediately stood up and slipped out of the room. Later, we learned that she'd sent her team to prep a witness much earlier than planned, someone who could speak to exactly what Bieber had mentioned in his post. The security guards, too, had their own silent communication. Two of them subtly moved closer to Diddy's table, shifting positions without drawing attention. One of the guards even unclipped something from his belt, not drawing a weapon, but making sure he could access it fast if things escalated. Diddy's whole vibe had completely shifted. Up until that point, he'd been calm, collected, occasionally, taking notes and nodding with confidence. But now he looked like someone who was about to snap. He couldn't sit still, constantly fidgeting, running his hand over his face, loosening his tie like he was suffocating. Then came the moment that pushed everything over the edge. Without warning, Diddy slammed his hand down on the table, knocking over a glass of water that shattered across the floor. The noise made everyone jump, but Diddy barely flinched. In a whisper so clear that the reporters nearby could hear, he said, "I'll make sure he never works in this town again. Neither of them will." His lawyer had to actually put an arm around him to keep him from storming out of his seat. The judge didn't hesitate. She slammed her gavel, calling for an immediate 15-minute recess. But that break? It only gave Diddy more time to stew in his fury while his legal team huddled around him, their faces drenched in panic. Those 15 minutes were exactly what Diddy didn't need. More time to get even angrier before the trial resumed. When Cassie came back after the recess, something about her had shifted. She walked to the witness stand, shoulders straight and head held high. Instead of keeping her gaze fixed on the floor like on day one, she looked directly at the jury. She didn't avoid Diddy's eyes either. It was like she was telling him, "You're not as intimidating as you think." Then Cassie dropped the bombshell. The prosecution unveiled text messages between Diddy and her that made the entire room gasp. One exchange from 2016 had Diddy bombarding her with 17 messages in a row, demanding to know why she hadn't answered his call. In another, he asked where she was, down to which hotel room she was in. "I need to know where you are every minute," one message read, and another, "That's the deal if you want to keep your career." The room was so silent you could hear the ceiling fans turning. Then came the real gut punch. Cassie described how Diddy controlled who she could talk to in the industry, including a list of male artists she wasn't allowed to speak to unless he was there. Justin Bieber, she testified, was one of them. When she asked why, he told her, "Don't question me." And when she did anyway, he grabbed her arm at an after-party and whispered, "You'll regret this." Cassie's voice didn't tremble once. She spoke clearly about being isolated, watched, controlled. The whole pattern she described matched what Bieber had just revealed online: monitoring, public humiliation, private threats. Every new detail she gave lined up perfectly with what Bieber had said, making it seem like they had planned this, all out. Though Cassie testified she hadn't spoken to Bieber in years, when the prosecutor asked why she hadn't come forward sooner, her answer landed like a ton of bricks. "He told me nobody would believe me. He said he controlled who made it in this industry. I saw him end careers." 2 jurors reacted visibly. One woman wiped away tears, and an older man took notes, underlining everything with a heavy hand. Then came the moment that shook the room. The prosecutors played hotel security footage from 2018. In it, Cassie is seen trying to talk to a male artist in a hotel lobby, and then Diddy appears, puts his arm around her, and leads her away. The body language was exactly what Cassie had just described in her testimony. Diddy's lawyer started to panic, frantically flipping through his notes as the video played. But Cassie wasn't done. She recounted specific events with jaw-dropping detail, dates, locations, even the people who were there. March 8, 2017 at the Standard Hotel in New York. June 22, 2017 at his house in Miami. September 12, 2018 backstage at the VMAs. Every time she mentioned a date, Diddy's lawyer grew more and more frantic, and then came the kicker. Cassie revealed that after she spoke to Bieber at an industry party, Diddy had pulled her aside and said, "Even Justin knows what happens to people who cross me." With Bieber now publicly supporting her, that threat hit like a ton of bricks. As Cassie kept testifying, you could see Diddy unraveling. Each new detail that lined up with Bieber's statement made him fidget more, whisper to his lawyer more, urgently, and grow visibly panicked. The calm, collected music mogul everyone once knew was vanishing before everyone's eyes. Weeks after the initial filing, Busby filed an amended complaint, naming Jay-Z as the celebrity allegedly involved. They wanted copies of the videos themselves. Legal experts pointed out that having access to the video evidence directly could give them a huge advantage in preparing for the defense. But Judge Submanian denied their request to amend the protective order, though without prejudice, meaning it could still be revisited later. The defense argued that the government should hand over the electronic evidence in their possession, but the judge's order was clear. The government would allow the defense to view and manipulate the videos through other means, though it didn't have to provide them directly. Cassie's words rang in the air long after she finished testifying. "It was hard for me, being so young and trying to figure out where to turn in an industry that pretended to care but would turn their backs on you in a heartbeat. But if she ever needs me, I'm just a call away." Just when the tension reached a breaking point, the prosecutor stood up with a folder in hand. "Your Honor, we'd like to present evidence that directly contradicts Mr. Combs' claim that Ms. Ventura fabricated these allegations." She pulled out her tablet and connected it to the courtroom's display system. The screens lit up with text messages from 2017 between Justin Bieber and Cassie. One message from Cassie read, "I don't know what to do anymore. He monitors everything. He says if I talk to anyone, he'll make sure I never work again." Bieber's reply, "This isn't normal, Cass. What he's doing isn't okay. You need to talk to someone who can help." The moment those messages hit the screen, Diddy's composure shattered. He shot up from his chair, the scraping noise echoing across the room. His face turned beet red, his eyes wide with disbelief. The music mogul everyone knew was completely gone. His lawyer tried to pull him back down. "Sean, don't do this," he whispered frantically. Diddy didn't care. Who heard him? He shoved his lawyer's hand away with such force that the man nearly stumbled backward. "This is all lies," Diddy shouted, pointing furiously at Cassie. "You know damn well that's not what happened. Where's your loyalty after everything I did for you?" His voice grew louder with each word, nearly shaking the room. "You're making this all up, both of you." The judge didn't waste a second. She slammed her gavel 3 times, her voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. "Mr. Combs, sit down immediately, or I will have you removed." But Diddy wasn't listening. He was beyond control now. Security officers moved toward the defense table, one stepping between Diddy and Cassie while the other took position behind him. Court reporters scrambled to capture every word of this unplanned meltdown, fingers flying across their keyboards. The jury was stunned, locked in complete shock. One older woman in the back row covered her mouth, trying to process what she was witnessing. A younger man in the front row leaned away from Diddy, visibly distancing himself from the outburst. "We need a recess," Diddy's lawyer shouted, attempting to regain some control over the situation. But Diddy was already focused on the evidence screen, pointing at the messages displayed for the court. "Those are fake? They fabricated those messages." He was wild now, gesturing so aggressively that his words echoed off the walls. "This is a setup. Justin never said that." The evidence on the screen was damning. Text messages from 5 years ago that completely contradicted Diddy's claim that Cassie was making up her story for fame or money. The messages showed Cassie confiding in Bieber about Diddy's controlling behavior long before the lawsuit even came into play. The judge banged her gavel again. "Remove the jury immediately," she ordered. As the 12 jurors filed out, they couldn't help but stare at Diddy, who remained standing, shouting. 2 security guards flanked him, moving in closer as the tension in the room escalated. "Sir, you need to calm down now," one of the officers said firmly, placing a hand on Diddy's shoulder. For a brief moment, it seemed like Diddy might shove the officer away, but instead, he fell silent, breathing heavily. The reality of what had just happened seemed to sink in. The damage was done. The carefully constructed image Diddy had built over decades was shattered in an instant. As the security officers took position on either side of him, a new reality set in, one that made Cassie's allegations suddenly seem far more credible. With the jury safely out of the room, Judge Marlowe didn't hold back. She stood up behind the bench, pointed directly at Diddy, and delivered one of the sharpest rebukes of her career. "Mr. Combs, this is a court of law, not a recording studio. You do not control what happens here," she said, her voice slicing through the room like a blade. "One more outburst like that, and I will hold you in contempt. You will spend the remainder of this trial in a cell, making appearances only when necessary." But she wasn't done. The judge ordered a psychiatric evaluation to be conducted before the next day's proceedings. She also imposed new security measures. 2 officers would stay within arm's reach of Diddy at all times, and his lawyers couldn't even speak to him without an officer present. Diddy's phone privileges were revoked. His legal team huddled in, the corner of the courtroom defeated. Their head attorney kept shaking his head in disbelief while another lawyer made frantic calls. A third lawyer scribbled notes, his gaze darting back to Diddy with a look that said it all. "We're in deep trouble." When the jury returned, the change in atmosphere was impossible to miss. One middle-aged woman in the front row physically moved, her chair away from the defense table. An older man who had been taking meticulous notes sat with his arms crossed, pen lying untouched. But the most telling reaction came from juror number 8, a young professional who had smiled at Diddy on day 1. Now, he wouldn't even glance in Diddy's direction. Meanwhile, the prosecution team kept their cool, maintaining perfect poker faces. But it was clear they were pleased with what had just unfolded. The lead prosecutor methodically organized her papers, occasionally glancing at Diddy with what could only be described as quiet satisfaction. Even her assistant had to hide a small smile behind her hand at one point. Security was on high alert for the rest of the day. 2 officers stood directly behind Diddy's chair, no longer even pretending to be casual. Another officer was stationed at the courtroom door, hand resting on his belt. Everyone knew that they were taking no chances with Diddy's behavior. Legal experts sitting in the gallery couldn't contain their reactions. A former federal prosecutor whispered to the person next to him, "He just lost right there." Law professors who had come to observe the case were furiously scribbling in their notebooks. One defense attorney from another high-profile case muttered, "Amateur hour." Through it all, Cassie remained unshaken. She sat perfectly still, hands folded neatly in her lap, her expression neutral. When Diddy erupted, she didn't flinch. didn't react, and certainly didn't give him the satisfaction of showing any fear. Her complete control was in stark contrast to his total lack of it. By the end of day 2, the difference was stark. Diddy had strutted into the courtroom that morning like he owned the place. Designer suit, confident smile. Now, as he shuffled, out with his tie loosened and surrounded by lawyers who looked like they'd aged 10 years, it was clear that his confidence had been shattered. His eyes were glued to the floor, avoiding the reporters in the hallway. The most telling moment came when his lead lawyer put a hand on Diddy's back to guide him out. Diddy shrugged it off, this time not from confidence but from defeat. What we saw in that courtroom wasn't just about evidence, it was about character. Cassie stayed calm, poised, and strong, while Diddy completely fell apart when Justin Bieber took her side. In the end, their true personalities emerged under pressure. Let's be real. After watching Diddy lose control and make threats in open court, this case may have already been decided. The biggest question now is, who else will speak up? Justin. Bieber just broke the unwritten rule of celebrity protection, and that door is wide open. Who else will step forward and take a stand against Diddy?